Wouldn't that be the other option?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. This is the I Know You Hear Me podcast here at the ICCC V podcast stage, and we have got the man himself. You know him as Mitchell Ellison from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is my pleasure to have on the show with us Mr. Geoffrey Cantor.
Why, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys.
Somebody said his name
You guys,
right.
finally somebody said my name right. Thank you.
And of course, along with us.
I love you too.
Along with us, we got my producer, Just Jeff, and then we got Micah from the Eclectic Collective podcast. So we got a full table here.
Full table.
We got a lot to jump into. Geoffrey, how's your weekend been so far at ICC?
This has been a great weekend. You know, I mean, we are in, I have to preface, I came into this room and it says ham honey.
Yeah.
So we were having a discussion before the podcast started. So if anybody who's listening or watching knows what ham honey is, please let me know. I'm in the room with the other actors. So it's been a great time. I think, you know, it's so much bigger.
Absolutely.
You know, last year it was a little crowded, although I ended up loving where I was.
Right,
I was
right.
seeing people I'd never seen before and who wouldn't come and see me necessarily. And so I loved last year. But this year I think, you know, it's like grown exponentially, and it's been terrific.
Yeah.
And our room also, you know, we had all the other Daredevil people.
Yep, and that's an exciting thing because we've got all you guys here today. I believe y'all did a panel earlier today.
Just Charlie and Vincent.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, I mean, and it made sense.
Right.
Deborah Ann and Royce and I, there's been no discussion whether we're coming back or not, and those two are definitely in it. Makes sense. They're also much more famous than we are, so like that's a bigger draw anyway.
Right.
I mean, I'm more charming, but they are more famous.
And you were also a very talented musician because your band, The Con Men, was playing last night, weren't they?
So that's been very interesting. So you asked me about the weekend, and when I got here, I would say 80% of the comments were, "So are you playing?" And here I am. I'm in like the music capital of the world. I'm a hack. Let's be really clear. I'm an okay singer who I love to do it. It's a great hobby.
Right.
You pick up a rock and you have a professional guitar player. Like, it's just absurd, the musicianship of Lee's band. They are so good. Even if they chose the wrong key for Moondance. Hey, they did. But they are so talented.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think I'm an okay singer, but I love doing it, and we had a great time like we did last year.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the highlights for me. But obviously, clearly, be like, I don't know if I see you or anything, but you sound great. It's like, okay.
Well, guys, I've got something specific that I want to talk to Geoffrey about. Do y'all have any questions before we deep dive into that?
Dive into it.
So, Geoffrey, I know we talked yesterday briefly when we found out we were going to be doing this interview, and you mentioned something very specific and something that's very near and dear to my heart that involves mental health and a project that you are now working on called Talking Out Loud. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
So all joking aside, back in 2012, 2013, I was working with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention with Joanne Harpel, who's the world's leading specialist in suicide bereavement.
Right.
So people who've lost someone, it's called postvention. So if you've lost someone to suicide, those people struggle tremendously. And so moving forward, she's been wanting to do something with youth. So we did a project with adults. I think we were out in California. And so she tried to do it with AFSP, and they wouldn't bite. And so she left them, and we've been working together. So we put together this project, Talking Out Loud, and I did the branding, and I named it. And I took 5 kids with a facilitator, and their parents were in another room watching.
Right.
And the kids shared their stories about their suicide loss. One lost parent, 2 lost parent, one a mother, one a father, one lost kind of a stepfather, and 2 others lost siblings. And, you know, a million kids a year lose a loved one to suicide. And there's nothing for young people. So there's tons of support for grown-ups.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tons of support.
Yeah.
But kids, first of all, are less likely to talk about it in the first place.
Right.
And there's like, if you're at a school and they find out your dad died and it was a heart attack or a car accident, bake sales and memorial services, suicide, there's so much shame still around
stigma,
it.
You know, nobody wants to touch that.
Exactly right. So so this was what Joanne wanted to do, and we were in the middle of post-production, and it's going to have a screening in New York City,
That's awesome.
down at in Tribeca the last Saturday of November, and then we're going to stream it, and we're going to have different versions, and we have some interviews with the kids that are a little longer form that you can have access to. And
Absolutely.
It's going to be free for schools and clergy and doctors and healthcare professionals. So we're hoping that it makes a difference. I can tell you that it made. So when you direct something like that, you're just listening and watching.
Right.
And when we finished, we sort of got together in a circle, and I was thanking everybody because the kids were amazing, and the parents were amazing, and the crew. Can you imagine spending an hour and a half listening to kids talking about suicide loss?
Yeah.
That's heavy stuff.
I can imagine.
And so we had a little talk, and I got all weepy, and I'm not a crier, and but kids who are suffering, it really, it's a problem for me, and it should be a problem for everybody.
Right. I
And
agree.
what's also interesting, like everyone talks about bullying, right? That kids take their own life because of bullying. No.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a myth around that. Bullying sucks.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not advocating bullying.
Right.
But bullying itself is not a reason why kids take their own life. There's usually it's underlying mental illness. But there's even more for those kids who are struggling themselves than there are for kids who are left behind. And once you're left behind, you are at more of a risk.
Yeah.
Because especially if you don't have a support system. So we're trying to just show the kids you're not alone. Other kids have dealt with this issue before, and it's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to ask them about it. And these parents, so these are all kids with their parents, and these losses weren't like yesterday. These losses were like, some were like 2 years and some were like 6 months.
Right.
All of the parents, 201, heard things they'd never heard before. Can you imagine being a parent and not being able to talk to your kid because you don't know what your kid needs, but you're also suffering your own loss? Mm-hmm. It was a profound experience. I'll be happy to share it with, we'll share cards, and I'll share it with whomever likes. It's rethinktheconversation.org if you're interested in this. Talking Out Loud is the name of the project, and I hope it's meaningful. I hope you don't need it. Right? I really hope you don't need it. But if you need it, or if you know somebody, and also please, if you know somebody who's struggling themselves, there is that, it's 988 now, is the suicide hotline, the National Suicide Hotline. Please, if you're struggling, you know somebody who's struggling, it's okay to ask. It's actually important to ask, and please, know that number's available.
I mean, it all comes down to we'd rather have somebody ask and still be here as opposed to the alternative, because it impacts more people than that person probably realizes.
Oh yeah, just today somebody asked. He was a vet who's doing a press thing, and we were talking, and he was, it always comes out, right, that somebody starts talking about it. And when he told me he had tried to take his own life, because that's what the Army does, and what saved him was Star Wars, like having a passion for something saved him. So all of a sudden, I go, well, I work in this field, whatever. So, you don't know what people are going through ever, and you have to be available. And if you're available, people will talk to you.
Absolutely.
So I think that's So thanks for bringing that up.
Of course.
It's a very important project. We've been editing it for about 7 months. It's hard to edit this kind of stuff. It's like every time I edit, I have to sit through it. I
can only imagine.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, how do you process that when you are going through that? Because that's heavy stuff that you're constantly revisiting.
That's a really good question. I was a social worker for 3 years at a long-term care facility.
Okay.
And then I also did a commercial for Kleenex, where I was the good listener. I traveled the country and did about 800 interviews. And that's how I ended up getting involved with AFSP, because Joanne asked me to work with them. I think being an actor probably is helpful, and having been a social worker is probably helpful.
Absolutely.
In that you, as an actor, you're forced to be non-judgmental.
Right.
To be empathetic, you can't judge. You can't judge the characters you're doing, and so you really have to step into somebody else's shoes, right? So if your body and brain and soul have practiced that, if that's your practice in your work, I think it's a little easier to be able to hear things that are really difficult, process them intelligently. It still makes you sad. It's hard. But I have a little more access, I think, and having been a social worker, I have I did it for 3 years,
Yeah.
professionally. So, but it is hard. Like I can tell you, like I'll watch that for like 3 hours trying to edit, and I'll just have to stop. And I think that's why it's taking so long.
Yeah.
It took much less time with the grown-ups. I'm not sure why.
Right, and I think it's just the innocence of the children with them being so young.
Maybe that's
because, I mean, we can all relate in some way to an adult that's, suffering through something, because we all have our frustrations in this crazy world we live in, but it's always the innocence of the children. We try to protect them from that or keep them away from all these negative things, but when you see that they're going through that, it hardens that blow so much more.
Yeah, I think you're right. The other thing is, I'm sorry that this is really not a big ICC conversation, but I think it's an important
no.
one.
No, don't.
It's
We did
important.
this. Deborah talked about her.
Oh, good.
Her
Okay.
her husband's.
Right,
what
and
he's
Deborah's
going
just
through.
amazing. So here's the interesting thing about the kids is this, that they, all of their experiences are very different, right? So one kid is like if you lose your dad, and this wasn't these kids, but this came up, like one kid lost his father. So his mother is suffering and struggling herself.
Right.
Sibling's struggling himself. He's left behind, he's struggling. Who's he going to talk to about it? He doesn't want to make his mom feel bad. She already feels bad. But also, he's now the man of the house. Like, what? Like, to go from being the kid to the man of the house and have no one to talk to, you have to actually put on even a bigger shell.
Yeah.
Right? And clearly, a lot of people take their own lives, mask that. Everybody says, it came out of the blue. It's like, I promise you, it did not come out of the blue. You just never noticed it because they mask.
Right.
And so each kid had such a significantly different experience of their loss than the other ones. Lots of shared things, of course.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Whereas grown-ups, when they lose somebody, they're already in a caretaking position. And so they process it a little more adeptly.
Yeah.
Not all of them. I mean, there's a whole
right.
thing called complicated grief where people who lose somebody are like seriously at risk and they can't get over it. Losing a child, I think, is really, really tough. But losing a parent when you're really, really young and being put in a position where you have to take over their role.
Yeah.
So, to your point earlier, I think it was also that is so difficult because it's not like there's some solution.
Right.
It's like, okay, I know I'm in Tennessee. I just got to say, I'm just going to give some numbers, right? Half the gun deaths in the United States, suicides. Half the suicide in the United States, gun deaths.
Yep.
Actually, more. More people die by suicide than they do of breast cancer.
Yeah.
There's only the largest organization, AFSP is the largest organization that deals with suicide loss and awareness and prevention. They are about an $11 million company. How much money is spent on breast cancer?
Yeah.
Right?
Billions.
Yeah.
Billions, right? And so you're talking about the same number of people who die, 10, 11, 12, $13 million versus billions of dollars. And it's, so there's still so much stigma around mental health,
Yeah,
to your point, and what we're
absolutely.
talking about. But it's, so until this country starts to really take it seriously, and people who say, well, no, people kill people, people are killing themselves, not guns.
Right.
There is, all the evidence shows, if you take away the means, the most effective means of killing yourself, you'll save lives. There's no argument there. That's what the science shows.
Yep.
So more men actually take their own lives because
Yes.
more men use more lethal means. Women are catching up.
Right.
Just so you know, women are catching up. More women attempt. Anyway, so this is a really fun conversation.
But I mean, it's
But no, I mean, it's super important.
But you say, we try to talk, Marvel and all
Right.
the fun stuff, but sometimes this stuff is what needs to be taught.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you have to take the sunglasses off
Right.
and show what you really
Right.
need. It has to be, without awareness, then there's nothing.
Absolutely.
If you can't talk about it, then someone going down that road who needed it,
Right.
maybe us talking about it,
yeah.
will solve that problem.
And
It doesn't always have to be about the fun
Of course not.
adventures. And I love everything we've been talking about today
Thanks.
Yeah.
has been amazing.
Yeah, so I'm Jewish, and there's a notion in Judaism that if you save one life, you've saved the world. So if one person has heard this and is willing to get help or willing to talk to somebody or willing to share or talk to somebody else, then to your point, we've done something good and important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've noticed too, especially as I've started this podcast and grown in the acting and wrestling worlds, in those specific areas with creative types, that tends to be, if somebody's struggling with mental health and they don't discuss it, suicide often tends to be something that they lean towards or they have attempted, and it's not something that people were welcoming to talk about. So the fact that we're able to talk about this now and kind of break that stigma and do something to help somebody, it's an absolutely wonderful thing.
I can tell you some positive news is, so for the longest time, suicide was the one death rate that continued to go up every year.
Yeah.
There was a lot of fear that during pandemic it was going to be the worst year ever.
Right.
And actually there's a lot more discussion about it, but what they found was the rate did not go up. I'm not saying that there's some sort of panacea of like we should have more pandemics and people living their life. But what I'm saying is the rate not going up, but more people talking about it did show that there's one positive aspect is that there is more of a willingness for people to seek help. But it is way behind, right? And if you imagine, are we wrapping up close?
No.
Okay.
No.
I mean, if you
You
imagine,
can talk as long as you
great.
want.
So for instance, if you have coronary artery disease, you're going to get a heart attack. If you have brain ill health, let's not call it mental illness.
Yeah.
But brain ill health. The worst outcome is suicide.
Yes.
But the symptomatology of an unhealthy brain is the willingness to take your own life, right? We're the only animal that does that. It is not instinctual.
Right.
And so, when they do more research and they actually start figuring that out, great. Until then, getting rid of the most effective means I would advocate is probably a really, 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 really good idea.
I absolutely agree, because it's been hitting way too close to home more often than not, and you see it way too much.
Well, and even a lot of the killings, like these, the shootings that are happening in schools and stuff, are actually glamorized suicides. Like a lot of those kids are looking to take their own life, or even the grown-ups who are on rampages. Like they want some sort of glorified way of going out.
Absolutely, and it's sad that it comes to that point, but like you mentioned too, they sometimes maybe they don't know how to express what they've been, traumatized with or going through, and if they had that option, that could have been a completely different scenario altogether.
Absolutely, yep.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so that's that topic. But yeah, it's very, very important to me. I'm very proud of the work we're doing.
And I thank you for going down that road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that had to take some courage for you to take that step to be like, yes, I'll take this project on and I'll direct it
Thank
and
you.
I'll help it. I mean, that's got to be a big step.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I was working with them, with grown-ups. So I've been in it for a while. I'm a very informed layperson around the topic.
Yeah.
Which I don't mind. I think it's I get to do what I love to do. Right, I'm in the rare position where I get to have fun and do what I like to do, and I liked. It's hard, but I like the work. But I also feel like I'm providing a service.
Absolutely, and I think it's completely awesome that you're using your status and your celebrity to bring awareness to these things and invest behind it too. It just opens the door to like people that are afraid to speak out about it, having a medium to do so because people care and it brings attention to it.
And can you give us the website one more
Yeah,
time?
it's rethinktheconversation.org.
And I will have that in show notes as well. That way,
Great.
if people want to click the link and support, check it out. That's all going to be
Thank
there
you so
as
much.
well.
Yeah, there's a donation page
Awesome.
on the
Yeah,
website.
so let's make that happen. Let's bring more awareness to it, and let's just let these people know that we care and that there are other alternatives besides that as well. So
Great.
I think it's an absolutely amazing thing.
Thanks so much. Thanks for raising it.
Of course, and thank you for taking the time to be here as
Of course,
well. So
always a pleasure.
awesome to see you again this year, and as our crowd is saying, we love you.
Oh, I love you.
My favorite person to come on our show.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Because I get his name wrong every time. That's why we had Flynn do it instead of me.
And guys, in all seriousness, thank you for tuning in again. Thanks for coming out to ICC this weekend. We got one more day of it. Jeffrey's going to be here. Go by his table, get a photo, get an autograph, have some fun. Come and nerd out and be amongst your people.
I'm much funnier at my table than I am. And usually I'm pretty freaking funny at the podcast.
Oh, no.
Like usually like we have a hoot,
Right?
Yeah, no.
This is important, but it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't always have to
It
be
doesn't
funny.
always have to be funny.
That is correct.
Sometimes you got to be serious, and it's hard for me because I'm a funny guy.
You are.
Yeah.
I tried, well, I used to be. You used to
You
tell
used
me
to
I was
be
funny all the
funny,
time. Jim, drop me my sound effect,
All
please.
week, ladies and gentlemen.
Drop me my sound effect. That's for you. You hurt my feelings.
Oh, that is beautiful.
All of a sudden, this took a turn, didn't it?
Well, guys, this is going off the rails in a good way, but we're going to go ahead and call it right here. Come out to ICC and have some fun. And if you're already here, get to Jeffrey's table.
Please
Get
come
picked
to
up.
my table. It's a nice table.
We're earring
A funny
Flynn.
table.
Yeah,
I have music at my table.
He does. He does. So, guys, come out, have some fun, go see Geoffrey, support a great cause, and just get out and be amongst your people. So, guys, thank you all for being
Thank
up
you.
here. Thanks,
Pleasure.
everybody, for checking this out.
See you next year.
See you next year for sure.
Same name.
Yes.
Same name, same time, and I know you hear me.
All right, everybody.